Thank you very much, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. First, let me thank the Sustainable Markets Initiative for inviting me to deliver a few remarks at this important event. Africa offers compelling opportunities for investors. And despite the challenging global economic environment, 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. The future of energy transition will depend absolutely on Africa, with its dominance in the deposits of green metals such as platinum, copper, cobalt, graphite, and of course, lithium. Therefore, Africa will help drive the battery energy storage and electric vehicles market, which is estimated to rise from $7 trillion today to $57 trillion by 2050. Now, think of Africa, think population, think market size. With a population of 1.4 billion people, projected to rise to 2.4 billion people by 2050, the continent will see rising demand for energy, for food, for health, for water, for sanitation, transport, telecommunications, and digital infrastructure, which some of you, our CEOs, are going to talk about today. The continent, with its large population, however, has 600 million people without access to electricity. But it's a question of whether you look at it as a cup half full or cup half empty. That is a 600 million people market that can be reached, and that will require $100 billion investment annually to drive achievement of universal access to electricity by 2030. Yet Africa, which has the largest sources of renewable energy in the world, especially 60% of the world's solar resources, uses only 1% of that potential. I always say that God loves Africa. We got lots of sun, so we have no business not having electricity. Africa, however, receives only $60 billion, or just 2% of the $3 trillion in global renewable energy investments over the past 2 decades. Savvy investors, and many of you are all savvy investors, should also invest, I think, in Africa's rapidly growing digital economy, which could add $180 billion to Africa's GDP by 2025. Unleashing the power of digitalization will require large investments, of course, in fiber optics infrastructure, data centers, the expansion of mobile networks, which will need about $100 billion in digital infrastructure investments. And we must, of course, close the $68 to $108 billion annual infrastructure financing gap, even as we focus on climate resilient and green infrastructure as part of Africa's drive towards net zero emissions. I wish to make 5 points on how we can make faster progress on this. First, the private sector must play a larger role. At the Africa Investment Forum 2023, which we held in Marrakech, Morocco in November, we were able to secure 34.84 billion US dollars of investment interest to projects in Africa in less than 72 hours. We must also leverage the $2 trillion of assets under management by institutional investors in Africa into climate resilient and green infrastructure. This will require, of course, that regulatory barriers be relaxed and that infrastructure be seen as a viable asset class for institutional investors. Second, we need more project preparation facilities to prepare and develop bankable projects. And this is particularly important as 80% of infrastructure projects in our fail at the feasibility stage, with 80% of them close. To lower cost infrastructure projects, multilateral development banks, also the African developers, need to set up concessional blended finance. At the African Development Bank, we have what's called the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, or CEFA, which has now grown to be the largest blended finance, concessional finance facility to support renewable energy projects in Africa. Fourth, partial credit and partial risk guarantee instruments of multilateral development banks should be used at scale to de-risk investments and leverage private sector financing. And fifth and finally, greater use should be made of local currency financing of infrastructure to reduce foreign currency exposure risks. Also, innovative approaches such as infrastructure asset recycling should be scaled up to create liquidity in the market by transferring public infrastructure assets to the private sector. This will free up resources to reduce public debt by more efficiently recovering deployed capital. As I close, let me say that I'm absolutely excited that the African Development Bank and its partners will be announcing commitments of several partners this week on what we call the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, or called AGIA. This alliance will raise $500 million in project preparation and project development, and also facilities, and they mobilize $10 billion to deliver green infrastructure for Africa. Together, let us unlock climate resilient and green infrastructure investment opportunities all across our beautiful continent. Thank you very much, and I wish you good deliberations.